Are you ready to uplevel your sales game? Well, here is a gift for you. It is the Mastering the Sales Conversation mini training. This training gives you my proven step-by-step approach to sales so that you can go from that overwhelmed and intimidated approach that you have to sales to feeling confident and leading a conversation so that you easily guide somebody to hiring you. You can get it right now by going to yoursalesmaven.com/mastering. This is my gift to you. Go grab it now.
Sales conversations make you feel awkward or pushy? It's time to ditch the outdated salesy strategies. Your guide, Nikki will show you how to combine kindness with selling skills to meet your prospects where they are, and in the process, how to uplevel your influence and income. Learn how to earn business easily and effortlessly. Here's Nikki.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to the Sales Maven Show. I'm your host, Nikki Rausch. Today's episode is a part of the Mastering Excellence series. This comes from my background in neurolinguistic programming, where we learn that there is a structure to excellence. And when you can break down somebody who is achieving a high level of success in some area of their life or business and see the structure, you can take that same structure and apply it to the area of your life and business that you would like to see similar results. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And I'm super excited to share that my guest today is Susan Friedman. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Susan. She is a badass in the world of nonfiction book marketing, coaching, and training. With over 30 years of experience, she's on a mission to help authors sell books in bulk. I love that statement. I can't tell you how much I love it. Through her company, Aviva Publishing, she's guided hundreds of nonfiction authors towards mastery in their niche. She's a writing powerhouse with 18 books to her name, the first selling more than 500,000 copies to one company. Talk about a bulk sale. She also hosts Book Marketing Mentors, an award-winning weekly podcast now in its 8th year, which ranks in the top 1.5% of podcasts worldwide. Susan, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. It's good to be here. And Nikki, we turned the tables. You were a guest on my podcast. Your podcast is live this week. So I'm excited about that. Get all the information. Yes.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I know our topic today is really about how to take a book and turn it into multiple products. But before we go there, I'm wondering, can you share a little bit more about how you work with clients and a little bit about yourself that's maybe not in the bio so the audience can get to know you a little bit better?
Yes. The reason I started my business, I always love to say this, is because I got laid off, not once, not twice, but 3 times.
Oh, third time's the charm, huh?
Third time's the charm. And I decided that's when the universe was trying to give me a message, and it was time for me to do something on my own. And I went into a niche market, and that was trade shows. And that was my first book, Exhibiting at Trade Shows, Tips and Techniques for Success. And it really is a niche market. Publishers aren't really interested in books on trade shows. And that's also how I got to start Aviva Publishing, was really just to publish my own work. But along the way came book coaches and said, hey, would you publish for me and for my clients? And that's when really Aviva Publishing, got off its 3 wheels and went on to 2, and we're just booming along there.
Love that. I love that your first book was about trade shows. My background comes from technology sales, and technology sales, trade shows are a huge part of what we do. And I counted one year, I did 100 trade shows in 1 year. Yeah. So I feel like if I never do another trade show the rest of my life, I'll be good. And I learned so much. And so I actually love to talk to people about strategies that I use at trade shows. I love that you wrote a book. I wish I'd known there was a book out there. I'm going to start telling my client there's a book out there on this.
Well, that one book led to several different other products or byproducts. And I know that you loved sort of taking things and breaking them down.
Yeah.
And the first thing was that I developed checklists for people like yourself when you were working those shows. I took my book and I said, okay, let's turn this into a checklist. And I think I came up with like 50 different checklists that came out as a result of that book. And I actually sold those for more. In fact, it was close to 10 times more than the book was actually selling for.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So for those of us who've written books, and like I said, we're going to dig into this today of how to turn your book into multiple products. Like what an awesome like story to share right off the bat that you 10x'd your book sales by taking content from your book and making it into other products. And in this case, checklists. I love a checklist. I think people love
checklists.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I did it, because I like checklists.
Yeah.
Forget the stories and everything. Just give me what I need to do.
Give me the checklist.
Short, sweet, simple. And then those checklists, by the way, I turned into tip sheets. So I took what the subject matter was and I wrote 100 words on that particular subject, that tip rather, and then 10 tips and you've got 1,000-word article. So you've got your checklist, you've got your tip sheets, you've got the article that comes as a result of that. And you can keep going on and on. But that's just 3 things that I was able to do very simply from the one book.
That is, well, again, this is what we're talking about today. I love one of my first business coaches when I started Sales Maven back in 2013, she always used to say, Nikki, recycle, repurpose, reuse. And to me, that's exactly what you're doing there is recycle, repurpose, reuse. Taking something, I teach this, but I think you're teaching it at like you're 10xing, 20xing. What I always teach is like, if you're going to spend time doing something, you need to turn it into 5 other things. Right? Like it can't just be one thing and done. What are 5 other things you can do with it? And so already you've given us 3 ideas from your book. Turn it into checklists. Take those checklists, turn them into tips. Take those tips and turn them into articles. That is phenomenal.
And those articles then can become mini books or ebooks as we have now. So it can be a lead magnet. It can be multiple different things depending, again, on your audience and what message you would like to convey to your audience. So always looking at, just as you said, I call it cut and slice and dice.
Oh, I like that.
Cut, slice, and dice. It's really how many different ways can you use this material? And I often just brainstormed ideas as to, this can turn into a speech. It can be a webinar. It can be, a workshop. You've got another 3, and those can pay a lot more, then you're, going into the 100x's of what you would get necessarily for the book. So the book I see the book as being this big fat business card that unlocks doors for you for multiple other things. Authors don't get rich on books.
I tell people that too all the time. At least I certainly haven't. I've written 3, not 18 like you, but 3. Yeah, there's no.
I didn't get rich on the books.
No.
But the money came from speaking and training. Training is really my sweet spot, as I love doing workshops. A 40-minute keynote speech doesn't turn me on, but a 3-hour or 3-day workshop, you've got, then I get excited.
Then you get excited. I love that.
Yes,
I love that.
So it depends. Many of my clients want to do keynote speeches, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But then what I suggest is going into a niche market and working within that niche market, because you're then separating yourself from the crowd. For instance, how many people are doing sales training or something on sales? There are hundreds, thousands,
Thousands.
millions of people
Yeah.
who are doing something or have written a book on sales.
Yes.
So you're looking at how do you stand out, the people you work with that differentiates you from the rest, and that when they're thinking of sales, they think of Nikki Rausch.
Yeah. When I think of that, for me, it's always that I work with women business owners, and specifically, I specialize in the conversation of sales. So the actual conversation that you're having in a live back and forth or in a written communication with a prospect. But I get what you're saying here about niching down. Okay. So some of the questions I always like to ask is, if I was going to stand in for you for a day, so I get to be Susan for the day,
Good
what,
luck.
lucky me, I think. So what would I have to do, or how would I have to think when I'm thinking about, okay, I've written this book and now it's time for me to really repurpose, turn it into multiple other things. What's kind of your thought process around that?
The thought process is just to brainstorm and think about how many different pieces of information that you have in the book and look at what can I do with this so that I can maximize the use. And as I said, I did the checklist, I did the tip sheets, I spoke on it. And now we've got, online, which at the time wasn't the same, but you can do courses. You can create an online course out of it, your workshops. So it's thinking, I like to call it breaking it down to the lowest common denominator as well.
Okay.
Within your book, you've got hundreds of different topic areas. And within even your sales conversation, you've got multiple different sections within that conversation, the beginning, the middle, the end, particularly the beginning and the end in a sales conversation, the objections. And I'm sure you just take each one of those, and just talk about openings, talk about closings, talk about objections. So those in and of itself, you can even break those down even further. And again, you're the expert here, but it's that thinking is constantly, how can I make more of what I've got? And it's thinking outside of the norm. Forget what everybody else is doing. If everybody's zigging, I'm going to zag. I'm going to go into the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Because I want to differentiate myself. I want to do things differently than everybody else. Yeah. When authors come to me and they want me to publish their book, there's two things I ask them. Number one is, who's your market? And number two is, what do you want this book to do for you? And if I want it, when I often get, oh, I want to get rich and famous. I want to sell 1 million copies. I want to be on the New York Times bestseller list. Yes, and you got to start somewhere.
That's right.
You don't go from 0 to 100. And I had a mentor who said, it takes 15 years to become an overnight success.
That's one of my favorite quotes. The person who said it to me, she said, it's a long, hard road to be an overnight success. She said that to me very early in my business. And I just remember like it like pierced my heart. And I was like, yes. And I need to remember that, because a lot of things in life feel like you're trudging through really thick, deep mud. And the process is so slow. And gosh, your boot came off as you tried to make a step, all these things that happen. So I love it.
It's not a straight road. It's not a straight road. And you're going to get roadblocks and, diversions, and things happen along the way. I've been at this for myself for close on 35 years. And so in that time, things have gone awry, and yet things have gone phenomenally. So you're going to get both sides of that coin. And as you know, it's a journey, and you've just got to be in it for the long haul. an author said to me once, he said, how long do I have to keep marketing my book? My question was, my response was literally, how long do you want to keep selling your book?
I always refer back when I hear questions like that. I always think about one time I was at my dentist office and I went into the restroom and they had this big poster on the back of the door when you close the door, and it said, you don't have to brush all your teeth, just the ones you want to keep. So when I hear somebody say, like, how long do I keep marketing my book? Well, only as long as you want to sell it.
Exactly. Exactly. There comes a point where Malcolm Gladwell called it the tipping point. Mm-hmm. It's like you push and you push and you push, and then all of a sudden you get there. However, it takes time to get there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very rare that people just get, famous overnight. So yeah, it takes work, it takes perseverance at that, and just keep on going. You get knocked down, bounce back up again. One of those blow-up dolls that, had a weighted bottom. Yes. I always think of it like that. It's like, okay, you can knock it down and it's going to come boom, right up again.
Right back up. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about this idea of you've got these multiple products now, one of my questions for you is, are you, with those multiple products, are they all referring back to the original book? Like, how much do you bring that into the conversation, into the training, into the worksheet, into the tip sheet, into the article?
It depends. It depends on your audience. The audience that I had for my book on trade shows, which was literally exhibiting at trade shows, tips and techniques for success. Not sexy at all. Wasn't a bestseller, but yet I managed to sell the 500,000 copies. But that didn't happen overnight. That happened because I built a relationship with somebody in the industry. So you're going to trade shows is a great way, for instance, to build network with people in the industry that you're in.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty. Your book could also be a giveaway at trade shows. How about that? A company might be interested in giving it away. Mine was used as actually a lead magnet to get people to come and, get a demonstration of the product. So they gave my book away to prospects. They had dealers around the world. The book was actually translated into 5 languages. And the dealers would give it away and to people hoping that they could do a demo. So it was a sales tool for the company. Mm-hmm. So again, it just depends, what do you want the book to do for you? You've got a speaking gig. Everybody in that audience needs to have a copy of your book. It's part of your contract with the meeting planner. Mm-hmm. If you can't get it through the meeting planner, then is there a company who could sponsor it so that everybody gets a copy?
That's fantastic. I love that you just said that, because I don't think I've ever thought about, I certainly have spoke at events where the organizer of the meeting have bought the book for everybody to have a copy. I've had events where they want me to then put up like a little table and sell the books right at the end. But I've never actually thought about going and asking if there's a sponsor that wants to sponsor the book so that it gets put in everybody's, bag, or that you get to hand them out at your speaking. Well, what would you say about that? What would you, from a sponsor standpoint? So that's you as the author going and finding who's the right sponsor.
And they have to have the same target audience as you, because then, there's a compatibility with the two of you. So, for instance, the company who bought my book were they did pop-up exhibits, the portable exhibits. Mm-hmm. and they were worldwide. Their audience were exhibitors at trade shows.
Right.
My audience were exhibitors at trade shows, but I was teaching people how to exhibit at the show, whereas they supplied the hardware and I provided the software.
Yes.
So I was teaching them how to behave in the booth, which, if you've been to a trade show, you know many people do not know how to behave at a trade show.
No, they sit there with their head down with
Yeah,
like looking
they're reading
at their
their own
screen.
material,
Oh,
they're eating, they're drinking.
Yes.
They look bored out of their minds.
Yes, like, please don't come talk to me.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, I remember those. Yeah, so many things. I really like, I feel like we just talk about trade shows because I love to talk about trade shows, but I want to stay on this idea of how to turn your book into multiple products. So one of the things I often think about is once I turn something into kind of, which I think you said this too with your tip sheet or your checklist that then becomes a tip sheet that then becomes an article. Do you ever then take those, like the articles, and turn them into then something else?
Yeah,
like
those become, like an ebook.
Right.
You could turn those, or they were called mini books.
Mini books.
So I had articles. There's a company that does. It's actually called a mini book.
Okay.
But book is spelled B-U-K.
Oh.
And they produce like little books, and they're cute. Mm-hmm. There are, I think, maybe 3x4 size-wise, fit in your pocket, easy to put into, a swag bag, easy for people to give away. Yes. So, yeah, I took an article and did exactly that with it.
Love that.
And yes, it gets easier once you start thinking of it. You're like, okay, maybe I could make flashcards. We did that with one product. We turned them into flashcards. There was a company that was, and I'm sure there are different companies that do this now, but you can do that. Mm-hmm. And then it becomes a learning tool, and it's just a different learning process. So when you're doing a workshop, you use, your flashcards as a way to help people, remember the points that you want them to remember, the tips. Mm-hmm. And you can have games with these. So yes, I mean, it's endless when you start thinking about it. Mm-hmm. I think I came up once with 125, but don't ask me, what they are.
125 ideas of what to do with the book.
125 different ideas of how you can use your book and your expertise. Yeah. Because your expertise, some people use their expertise, maybe in a courtroom. For instance, they look for experts. You get interviewed on television and radio because you're an expert in a subject. If you look at the people who, let's say CNN, they have experts in certain areas. They always go back to the same experts. Are there more people who got the expertise? Absolutely. But they feel comfortable with the experts they've picked out, and they continue to use those experts. Mm-hmm. You'll see the same people coming up over and over again. Why? Because they're good. Yeah. And they share the information that comes over well on the air.
I love that you just took it out of like the book realm too, and thinking about your expertise and what you can do with your expertise, and how can you multi-purpose that? How can you take your expertise and package it in all these different ways, which a book is certainly one way to do it. But if that's not interesting to you, right? Like for some of us, this maybe relates to you too. It's a podcast, right? Like I decided to do my podcast versus writing another book. So I get that.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I love my podcast. I love interviewing experts like yourself. I am Book Marketing Mentors for the listeners, and it's at bookmarketingmentors.com. And yes, I just love it, but it's all around the subject of book marketing. So you talked about sales.
Mm-hmm.
It did not matter to me whether you had a book or not. I was honing in on your expertise. And that's what I look for when I interview people on the show, my guests. They're all experts in a certain area. And even though maybe I've had, I don't know, 2 or 3 people who've talked about LinkedIn, but they all come from it from a different angle.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's finding those different angles and looking, and that's the same thing with your expertise.
Yeah. Which really, I think for the kind of books that you're talking about, that you are pouring your expertise into the book, right? So of course you're going to be able to multi-purpose it in a lot of different ways, whether it's guesting on podcasts too. That's the other kind of big one. I think we have used so many pieces of my content to write up as a pitch for a podcast, right? To have me be the guest expert.
I think that's how I found you. You were introduced to me that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't have known about you otherwise.
Right.
So that was exactly it. It was perfect. Right. And it was a wonderful podcast. I love it.
Thank you.
You know, so it's the same thing is looking at how can you multi-purpose, you know, everything. And the book, as you said, is just one product. Yes. And as we know, you can only sell it for a certain amount. People are willing to pay. However, that book, as you said, if it's a program, you know, people can charge, I don't know, $1,000, $1,200, even more, $3,000 for a program.
Right.
Speeches, you know, speeches are getting $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. I know my colleagues who, you know, are in those kind of ranges and more.
Yeah.
And the book is just, you know, it's a $20 book.
Right. I like that you called it what did you call it? The big fat business card.
Yeah. It's a way to get your foot in the door. It's really interesting because several years ago, I did an anthology. And one of the people who was part of that anthology supplied, you know, one of the chapters. And by the way, that was a product. I sold that, being in part of what they call a compilation or anthology. Well, this one author, she was talking about weight loss and she had a specific program on there. And lots of people talking about this. However, that one chapter in the book allowed her to get on the stage where she was turned down multiple times before she was seen as an author and had a book. She went on to take that material and produce her own book, but she started off with a chapter in a compilation.
Yeah. I feel like there's still a little bit of a mystique around an author. I don't know if you feel that way. Like, yes, anybody can be an author, which that's kind of always been the case. But there is something about, I think, people who maybe aspire to write a book, or a person who thinks I could never write a book, when they meet somebody who's written a book and or multiple books, it does raise your credibility for sure.
Oh, absolutely. It's your big fat business card. It's to say, hey, I'm an expert in this area. And that is your credibility. In fact, I love that you brought that up, because nowadays, if you go and speak, they expect you to have a book as a speaker. If you look at all these famous people, the anchors, the celebrities, they're all having books now because there's an expectation. They didn't write much. Many of them are not written by them. They're ghost written.
Yeah, ghost
in
written.
their voice. And brilliant ghostwriters write in the person's voice. However, they didn't sit down and write it.
Yeah, and pen the book. Yeah.
And people who don't feel they can't sit down and write, I have them all the time. It's like, talk it into a recorder.
Mm-hmm.
You've got it on your phone, talk it into that. That can be transcribed, and you give it to an editor to work with it. They can put it, help format it into a book.
Yeah.
There are easier ways these days of doing it than sitting in front of a blank screen, not knowing what to write.
My first book, I had a format to follow. And so that was really helpful. And then the second book, I knew what I wanted to write, but it was taking me a really long time for a lot of reasons. I was having a little bit of the first book, I didn't actually expect anybody to read it. I just wanted to say that I didn't want to say that I'd done it. I wanted to feel that sense of accomplishment of having done it. I'd set it as a goal. And then the second book, I really kind of freaked out because I was like, oh my gosh, I think people might read this. So it felt like a lot of pressure. And it took me, I had to get myself back in a process to and follow a structure, which I actually give this away now because of something I did. It was from my background in neurolinguistic programming, where we found what's the structure to become a published author? What are the steps that people follow? So as soon as I put the steps in, then the book was done in a month. And then the third book was really a compilation of a lot of my content. And I did work with somebody who took my content, my trainings, put it into a book for me, and then I edited it from there.
Yes, awesome. Exactly. You make it work and you make it work. It gets easier each time you do it because you learn. I've written 2 books for Wiley, Dummies books, and 1 for Penguin, the Idiot's Guide book. And they've got a process. Wiley makes you write, the Dummies book makes you write the table of contents in immense detail. If you've got a Dummies book and you look at it, you will see there could be up to 10 pages maybe of table of contents. There's everything. They want that structure before they want you to write. And what I realized was what they're doing is I'm building the skeleton.
Yeah.
And then it was easy to put the meat on the bones.
Yeah.
Because I had it all there. I knew exactly, I'm going to talk about this, then I'm going to talk about this. And then, so I knew that process. And it was a great learning because it frustrated the heck out of me because I just wanted to just write, let somebody else do it. But having that structure, and as I said, they had to pass that structure, look at it and make sure that it fit. And then once that was, the green light was given, then I could actually write the material. But then it was easy.
Yeah.
It was done in a matter of months.
I think that is a brilliant tip too. If you know you want to write any content, I actually do this when I'm putting together a training. I write a table of contents or an outline of these are the things that are going to be covered. And then I start building once that's done. And then it allows for me to move things around and or just completely drop things when I realize this doesn't actually fit where I thought it was going to fit. So I'm going to take it out. But having that outline for me is always the way that I build any kind of new piece of content training. So I love that.
It's a great, structure to follow. And as you said, you're talking about how do you break things down? That's it.
Yeah.
What do you want to cover in that chapter?
Yeah.
I mean, a book is made up of chapters, and within the chapters, there are 3 subchapters, so subtopics of the topic. And then within each of those subtopics, there are 3 subtopics. So within one book, within one chapter, you can cover, let's say, 9 different parts of that particular topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so you do that 10 times, you've got your book.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah, that is so cool. So cool. I love this. This has been such a fun conversation. I really appreciate all that you've shared. And I do get this idea, and actually I have some new ideas from you of like how to take content or my book or my expertise and really think about it from this standpoint of multiple products. And I do think now for me, and if you as a listener are listening to this and you want to do this, let me know because maybe we can challenge each other, is to do a brainstorm session of like, I haven't done that in a while, of really like brainstorming out something and then seeing what else can I turn it into, what else can, and really challenging, because usually I go 5, but you said you came up with 125. So I feel like challenge accepted. Let's see. Let's see what can happen from that. So thank you. Is there anything I haven't asked you about that you know you want to share?
One thing that came through my mind as you were talking is that you can take your book, let's say it's on sales, and you can then direct it to sales for plumbers, sales for electricians, sales for, women in healthcare. You can take that same material and adapt it very easily to another market. And when you adapt it and direct it to that market, they think, oh my goodness, this person has done this for me, versus just another sales book. So think about that as well. Which audiences can you serve with that same material? Now, maybe you may need to go in and, let's say if you've got a story and you find stories that may be more applicable to that market, but you could still do that quite easily when the material is the same. Like when I was in the trade show, I didn't niche myself down. My niche was my topic. And so then I could speak to people selling gas cylinders. I spoke to people who sheared sheep. I spoke to, it was crazy, the different types of markets, but the same material applied to them when they were going to the show. So if you think like that as well, and if you think niche markets, yes, I could talk about for a long time.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's, again, some more ideas to add to my my
but that came to me as you were talking. I was like, oh, let me mention that while I'm mentioning things.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for doing that. All right. As we wrap up, I always like to ask a few little questions so people can get to know you even better. You've been so gracious on this, so thank you. Are you okay if I ask you? I always call it the little something extra section.
What happens if I say no?
I'll skip it.
No.
I'll honor it.
I'm just playing with you.
Okay. So my first question I love to ask people is, what brings you pleasure and or joy right now?
Oh, I think the funnest thing is spending time with my grandkids.
Oh, that's a nice answer.
And playing, games with them. The youngest one, who's almost 8, loves, will you play a board game with me? And I hate being called grandma, so they call me Sushi. And that's got a whole story to it. So
that's
there's
darling.
Nothing greater than them coming rushing when I walk in the door and they say, oh, Sushi.
Oh, that's so sweet. All right. What is something people would be surprised to learn about you?
That I hugged a tiger and I was chased by an elephant.
Wow. That might be one of the most unique answers I've ever got to a question. You hugged a tiger and chased by an elephant.
Not at the same time.
Okay. All right.
And not in the same place. One was in Africa and one was in Thailand.
Okay. All right. I love it. Okay.
I've got pictures to prove it.
Okay.
At least the tiger, not the elephant. The elephant, we came between them and the mother and the baby. You do not want to stop and take pictures. They're running after you. Shh. You're moving very fast.
Yeah, you're not stopping to take the picture of that, for sure. Okay. What about something exciting going on in your business right now?
I think the most exciting thing that I'm revved about is putting together a crash course in book marketing. Because I think that, well, what I'm seeing is that so many authors get the book and then don't do anything with it.
Yes.
And it's really sad. And I want them at least to do something, which is better than nothing.
Yes.
Because it's not going to sell itself. You have to do something.
You only have to market it as long as you want to sell it.
Yeah. And again, what I'm doing is taking a taste, my own medicine here is literally breaking it down. What is the minimum that somebody needs to know?
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. And now what about somebody listening? What's the best way for them to connect with you?
Well, I would love to offer your listeners, if they would like a brainstorming session with me, I call it, book marketing brainstorm, and it's literally bookmarketingbrainstorm.com.
Perfect.
I've got a small questionnaire just so that I know a little bit about you before we hop on a call together, but they can have a complimentary 20-minute session with me. It's not a sales session. If they'd like to work with me, that's a whole different conversation, but it's talking about, whether they're published or they haven't published yet, what the direction they should go. I'm happy to talk about that. And of course, marketing, which I love talking about.
Yeah. That's very generous. Please take Susan up on that offer if that's like spurs anything for you, because that's incredible that you offer that. Thank you so much for offering that to the audience.
My pleasure. Your listeners deserve it.
Yeah, they're great. I'm very blessed.
Great. I know. I love listeners.
I do too.
I love podcast listeners.
I do too. And I'm such an avid podcast listener. So I love the whole podcasting theme. All right, Susan, thank you so much for your time and all your expertise that you shared today. I'm very grateful to have had you here and to learn. And I feel inspired. I have some things to go and do. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. It's been great. I loved it. I loved interviewing you, and now having the tables turned. It was fun.
It was fun. Thank you. And for you, the listener, thank you so much for being here. I would love to know, what was your big takeaway from today? Did something that was said inspire you? Did it spur an idea from you? And what action are you going to take? Please reach out. You can find Susan and I both on social media. We'll have all of her contact information in the show notes. And I just wish you continued success in all that you're doing. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to Sales Maven. Visit us online at yoursalesmaven.com/maven for more resources to boost your confidence and skills.
Are you ready to increase your confidence in your sales conversations? I have a gift for you that is going to show you exactly how to do that. It is my Closing the Sale ebook. It's all about leveling up your confidence, giving you language to use, how to seamlessly move somebody through the sales process. And you can get it right now by going to yoursalesmaven.com/Maven. Go grab it.